Jimmy Courtney. I'm currently with the Edmond Police Department. I've been with Edmond for 17 years now, currently assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division. So part of my assignment is I investigate crimes involving kids, whether it's physical, sexual, or anything in the online aspect of it. I'm also part of the OSBI task force. So of that, it's called ICAC, so which is Internet Crimes Against Children. So we receive cyber tips all across from different parts of the world, anything that's related to Oklahoma, and in particular anything here in Edmond. Some of the aspects that we see, we get cyber tips from like Gaggle, which is the program that the school's Chromebooks use to monitor. If there's stuff that's questionable or inappropriate, not only does the school get the report, but also we do, and then it's our responsibility to follow up and make sure that everything is appropriate and that those images are deleted and not sent out any further. We also go into the schools, we talk to kids. It's a little bit hard right now with all the COVID stuff, but pre-COVID, we would go in, especially in the middle schools is where we would start. We tell kids, we're not telling you not to use the internet. We're just wanting you to do it safely and smart. Think about what you're putting out there. Think about how people are going to perceive you when you're on the internet. And we ask parents, what are your kids doing? A lot of kids, kids are way more tech savvy than their parents, and they know how to bypass or loopholes where they can get online, and parents necessarily don't follow that. But kids also watch what their parents are doing. So we ask, parents, think about what you're posting, think about what you're viewing that you may think kids may not see or notice, but they do. Some of the goals is, I'm going to talk about some of the different cases that the Edmond Police Department we currently have. Some of the apps, social media, some, prevention, education, and some assistance. Normally, when we're in person, have parents that have particular problems or questions, and we can also meet outside of this. And at the end, you'll see my email. So if you have any questions or problems, and feel free to contact me via email, and we can work out a time that maybe we can provide individual assistance with you. And we'll provide you some resources, especially parents that have younger kids. More than ever, kids are on technology and have access to the internet. That's their livelihood and the thing that they know. But we want you to remember, it's still, just because they have it, it's still, unfortunately, your responsibility to monitor that and to make sure that they're going through that journey safely. Some of the common cases that we see, inappropriate content, whether it's sexting, pictures, videos, especially during all the COVID stuff, we have seen a dramatic increase in what we call cyber tips, which is whether it's Xbox, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Google, Gaggle, everything reports to NCMEC. If they report a cyber tip, NCMEC will go through and check and see what IP address was used and where that IP address relates to what agency, and then they funnel it down to the appropriate law enforcement agency. And within the past probably 6 months, we had seen, which we may normally get a couple a year, within the past 6 months, we got about 42. Which on all that we have to, follow up and try to figure out and determine, is this a case where, a predator is luring kids and getting their images and stuff to send out? Or is this a case where kids are communicating with each other and then things escalate and what we call self-produced images and stuff, not necessarily child pornography images. We see a lot of issues that kind of spawn from online gaming. Kids are online, they're hanging out with friends, people that they think are friends, not necessarily people that they have met in person. A lot of them are, but a lot of them we see, online gaming friends that are in a different country or, a different area, and they'd actually never met. And then they kind of introduce them to inappropriate websites, inappropriate talk and behavior. As a parent, just kind of monitor who your kids are talking to, how they're talking, and, if their behavior is starting to change and you start having issues more than normal, definitely check and start monitoring their online behavior and see who they're talking to and what's happening with them. One of the other things we see is they have a bunch of different formats and stuff, but one of it is Omegle, which predators are known for getting on that, and they call it Omegle games. So they will give kids points for doing certain activities and behaviors. Part of those activities and behaviors, if they're in the wrong chat groups and stuff, are, you'll get 500 points if you walk around naked around your house. If you do this or that, and they'll have their friends involved. So, of course, it's a game that the kids are thinking it's all fun and games, but on the backside, predators are sitting there recording images and stuff. Another big issue that we see is cyberbullying. Kids are really tough, and we always joke like, "Oh yeah, I'm putting on my UFC gloves so I can type at the computer and send out these messages and stuff." As opposed to if it was actually face to face, a lot of kids would not be saying these kind of comments, and they know, but they think that they're immune, that it won't affect them because they're behind a screen. But on the backside, it affects kids. It could affect them lifelong. The issues that they face during cyberbullying. My recommendation, if you feel your kid is being bullied, report it. If it's related to the school, report it to the school as well as your local law enforcement. Another area that we see is online sexual solicitation, luring kids. It's usually, I've had as young as 8 years old, but usually you see it in middle school and into high school. Kids start chatting, they start kind of dating online. Next thing you know, they're sending pictures and images back and forth. Well, it's all fine until something happens, someone gets mad or they break up. And then next thing you know, that person's images and stuff are out for everyone to see. A lot of the scams that we see, not only with kids, but also adults, is people come in and, they start sending inappropriate images, sexual images. And once the suspect, once they get the sexual image that includes the person's face, that's when everything switches and they start, threatening and telling them, hey, if you don't, send me $500, you don't send me Amazon gift cards or Apple gift cards, I'm going to do this. One of the scams that we see that's very common that I had is that, a college kid, he thinks he meets on an adult website, where they say they're over 18. They share images and videos. Well, that person was sharing images and videos of a known adult film actress, and where he was actually sharing his, and then they started, soon as they got a picture of his face, another person come on reporting that they were this person's dad and that this was actually a juvenile and that she needed to go to counseling or they're going to go to the police, to the point where they end up getting $26,000 from him. Finally got to the point where he's like, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to take my chances going to the, unfortunately, trying to locate these people are difficult. I've yet to have one that actually checks back to the United States for us to follow up on. Most of them are overseas, and that's, they're getting away with it. I mean, this not only applies to adults, but also, we see the same issues with kids. Especially, I don't know if your kid has Snapchat, but we have a ton of issues with Snapchat. Some of the most recent issues that we've had, guy and girl, they were dating, they shared not only videos, but they also shared their username and passwords. Well, their child had, the sexual images and stuff in their My Eyes Only part of Snapchat. Well, everything was fine until the boy got mad at the girl. They broke up. Well, he had her username and password. So he goes in, posts all her My Eyes Only videos into her storyline, and then locks her out, changes the password. And so until we could get it reported, several people did end up seeing her images, unfortunately. If you do find yourself in this situation, it's important that not only do you report it to the whatever app they're using, but also report it to law enforcement as soon as possible so we can work on getting those images taken down. Our recommendation is talk about the risk at every age with your kid. Talk about looking at, younger ones looking at inappropriate sites, not clicking on pop-ups, not sharing your passwords with anyone, not trusting everyone you meet. Just because you meet them online doesn't mean that they're your friend. It just means that, it's someone that and you don't know who you're actually talking to. As your kids get older, critical that you talk to them about, cyberbullying, sexting, posting personal information, working to, meet these people offline. Some of the predators, I mean, they're good at getting your kids to believe that you're the evil one and that, they can only trust them. They'll send them gift cards, they'll send them phones, anything to win their trust over and to make them think that, their parent or their current family is not their ideal situation. Go back one. So what can you do? When you're talking to your kids, establish expectations for online behavior, have consequences for inappropriate posts, inappropriate websites, talk about appropriate usernames and, not putting your actual real name on there for everyone to see or where you live, anything like that. And kind of monitor and review comments. I'll talk about later on some different programs and stuff you can, a lot of them are purchased, a lot of them are not, but that you can use to help monitor your kids. And also talk to your child about what their friends are posting, not getting caught up in the drama. And if their friends are posting something that's inappropriate, for them to be the ones to report it and to, talk to their friends about what's appropriate and not. Online privacy, we want to look at what's okay, whether it's pictures of family, friends with their permission, normal game conversations in the games. What we don't want kids are doing, sharing personal information, personal family stuff, their real location, unless it's a friend from school that they have actually met. As I like to, talk to them about face to face, a real live person. When you're talking to your kids, we gotta, unfortunately lecture and not posting inappropriate, illegal behavior, threats of violence. I get a lot of times we get reports where, ex-boyfriend's mad at new boyfriend, and then they end up sending messages that, they're caught up in the exchange and drama, and they end up sending, messages that are threatening violence, threatening to kill people, especially when it's direct threats. Those are criminal, and we will investigate those. Underage drinking, drug use, hate speech as well. Normally, we have 2 videos. If you go to, and I'll show you at the end, NetSmarts, it will have like where you can play videos, and it gives your kids kind of scenarios of what to do and how to act in certain different situations. Which it's and if you go to netsmarts.org, they have a lot of different similar videos and stuff to help kind of make kids kind of think outside the box of what they're doing. As we go into the schools and stuff, we talk to kids. It says here 2.5. I think that's very, very conservative. I would say it's a lot higher, especially given what we went through the past year and stuff. It's very common, whether it's intentional or not. Not necessarily the saying the kids have taken pictures and stuff, but they have sent images, whether it's something they've got off the internet, they're in a group message and they accidentally got something shared, and then it says that they say 7% have received a sex message, which I think that's what we see. I would say numbers are a little bit higher than that. We talk to kids about it's important. We're not naive and thinking that you're never going to get these messages, but it's critical when you do get these messages to handle it appropriately, not send it out to anyone, not show it to anyone, immediately notify your parent, so that way they can safely contact us. We'll get the image removed off their device, and then that way they're not getting in trouble. Because if it's a fellow student or someone that's under the age of 18, technically, if they just have it on their phone, whether it's of someone else or themselves, is technically child pornography. If they've taken the image of themselves, they've technically manufactured child pornography. And then if they've sent it to someone, then that's technically distribution of child pornography. So, and that's of any image of someone under the age of 18. A lot of kids think that it's funny. They're caught up in it. They're trying to impress someone. Like I said before, they share it with a boyfriend, girlfriend, someone that they trust. And then, I always tell them what happens when you're no longer friends or they're angry at you, and then, your image is out there. Some of the consequences that we see with kids that have been sexting, they're embarrassed, they're humiliated. Not only, their friends are going to see this and they'll have to, face them at school, but also their parents, their coaches, their teachers, their principals. And once it's out there, always like to tell them it's like toothpaste. Once you squeeze it out of the tube, there's no putting the toothpaste back in. And if it's not an image that you would show to your parents or your grandparents, then let's not put it out there on social media for everyone to see. Whether you intended it to be private or not, those images still get distributed. They're bullied, they're extorted, blackmailed. They will, could receive discipline at school, and then there could be police involvement in criminal charges. So sexual solicitation is any unwanted sexual request or any sexual request by an adult. And this, I've had it, middle school, they are on a, whether it's like Discord server, they're chatting, talking about game stuff, and the next thing you know, someone, an adult who was like 23 was communicating with these teenage girls who lived in, the guy lived in Canada. We were able to forward it up there to the Canadian equivalent to ICAC for them to investigate and follow up on and pursue on charges on their end. A lot of it occurs on social networking sites such as, Instagram, Snapchat. And it starts off innocent and, everything's fine. And the next thing you know, they're kind of down these rabbit holes and they're caught in a position that they don't know how to handle it and they haven't experienced it. And, next thing you know, they're sending stuff. We most commonly see it of older teens. I'd say, starting in middle school, 7th, 8th grade, especially all the way up into, adults. Most kids, the solicitation stuff, they kind of brush it off. They're not bothered by it, worried by it. It's just kind of part of their norm, unfortunately. Offenders, especially if they're true predators, they are great at grooming kids. That's pretty much what they do all day long. It starts off innocent, natural curiosity, and then things escalate until, explicit images are shared. They give them gift cards, they give them cell phones, empty promises of all this kind of stuff that they're never intending to follow through with, or it's not reasonable. Their whole purpose is to get those images, and then the predators, what they end up doing is sharing those images and stuff on the dark web to different people across the world. Some of the signs that we see in grooming, if your kid's receiving gifts, whether it's gift cards, Starbucks, I had one where a kid was receiving Starbucks at school from an adult that should not have been sending them, Starbucks. Unknown calling. They start kind of withdrawing, rejecting, hanging out with family, to past the norm. Teenagers, you will see that, but this is abnormal type. They get very upset when they're not online. You walk in, they're flipping their phone over, they're minimizing their screen, they're erasing, settings and stuff. as I talked about before, there's several videos that you can go. If you do find yourself in this situation, it's important to report it to the CYBERTIPLINE, which is at the bottom of the screen. Also, like I said before, we don't want those images on your device. We've got to get the what we call known child pornography off the device, and then that way we can make sure it wasn't sent to anyone else that may have those images, and try to contain it as much as possible. Report anyone that's sending your kids these photos, videos, even if it hasn't crossed the line or it's not where they would pursue or accept charges. At least we start having a paper trail and start documenting this. If they're asking your child to send them sexual images, they're talking to your kid in a sexual or unwanted manner, and especially if they're not a friend that they've met face to face and they're wanting to meet the kid in person. Some of the examples of cyberbullying, sending mean, whether it's text message, whether it's post, photoshopping pictures, creating fake profiles. We've seen a ton of this. Kids get mad at each other, and instead of letting the system work and working things out, they start posting videos, creating fake profiles, and once it's out there, it'll go like wildfire, and it's hard to contain those rumors. And kids get kind of confused just because it's out there. They think it's the truth as opposed to the actual facts. In cyberbullying, there's typically three people involved. You have the one that is actually the bully, that is sending and posting these thinking it's funny. You have the victim that is, very traumatized. And we see a lot of it, not so much with males, but more in females. Girls are sometimes very, very mean to each other, and they take things very personal. And then you also have the point where you have the bystander that isn't reacting, isn't doing anything, and this is occurring, and they know about it or somewhat involved. If you feel that your kid is being bullied, some of the things to look out for is, they're going to stop using their computer, their phone. Their behavior will change whenever they start receiving, text message, instant message, email. They don't want to go to school. More than normal, you can tell that they're definitely something's going on with your child, and they're withdrawing from friends and family. Some of the stuff that is critical, in these cases, if we're looking to pursue charges or, try to prevent any evidence, any messages, it's critical to save. With Snapchat, you do see a lot of those messages that are deleted, whether it's intentional or just the way the program works. Instagram as well, we see it, and they can go in, and with text messages, stuff can be deleted, so it's critical to save everything, because you'll get one party that's saying, oh no, this is the way the conversation went, when in fact they've deleted to make it look like they didn't have any involvement and it was the other person's fault. Report them, whatever platform they're on. All of them have reporting mechanisms for you to go in and report. If you have to delete that account and create a whole new one, like I said, report it. If it's a school issue, report it to the school, and then report it to law enforcement as well. Some of the behavior you'll see, they'll quickly switch screens, close programs. They're using computers all hours of the night. Kind of goes back to the old saying, nothing good happens after midnight. Well, Now, same thing happens. It's just happening in your home and more accessible to more predators and bullies. Kids will get upset if they can't use the computer. They don't really talk to you. They're avoiding, like if you ask them what they're doing, that kind of stuff, they're avoiding it. We'll see a lot of times multiple online accounts. We see this a lot in Instagram. We call it, they have Finstagram. So they'll have a fake account, which is what they think, their parents are seeing. If you click right at the very top of it, there's a little down arrow, and then you can see if they have another account linked to it, and kids will switch back and forth. So they'll have their account that they are communicating with all their friends and doing all the stuff that isn't necessarily appropriate, and then they have their fake one that looks like they're not doing anything for their parents to check. Talk to your kid about if they're involved, whether it's bullying, whether it's the victim or the bystander. Encourage them to try to report it, talk to the victim, and try to help them through it. Some of the tech options you have, installing filters and monitoring software on devices. I have a screen here later on that kind of talks about that. Look at individual apps. Know what your kid's downloading. You can go and they can rank certain apps, and it'll tell you whether it's safe for your kid and where the issues and stuff come in. OpenDNS is, a monitoring program where you can lock down, when the internet's accessible. It's more on your router side. A lot of parents have had good with the MobiSip parental controls. That's what, and each device and program have their own. AT&T, they have, their smart limits and where you can set parental guidelines and stuff, as well as, Apple and Android devices as well. Just remember, those programs can't catch everything, and a lot of times what we see is it's delayed. You may catch it, but then it's kind of delayed. Kids are very smart. They'll learn, if they can, they'll bypass, instead of going into the app that might catch it, they'll go into an Explorer or a program that is not necessarily being monitored, and they'll have a private setting, and then that's how a lot of times they can bypass these systems. So be aware and communicate some of the most important things. As talked about earlier, the NetSmart, very great option for, not only parents, teachers, anyone that is needing this for different age groups. This is my email, so if you have any questions that aren't addressed on this, any follow-up stuff that you'd like to schedule, feel free to email me, and then we'll work to see what we can do individually.
Thank you so much, Mr. Courtney, for sharing this information again with our families. I do have just a couple of follow-up questions.
Okay.
Just as you were talking, one of your first few slides, I had this question in the back of my mind. At what age should we be asking or engaging in what type of conversations with our students? So I really appreciated that slide that showed, here's really what you should be doing with younger children. Here's what you should be doing with tweens and teens. How often do you think we should be having conversations with our students?
I would say, you can kind of cut each one. You can tell some may have to be daily, depending on the student. Some, weekly, monthly, every couple of weeks, but each one can kind of be customized depending on the student and the involvement or lack of involvement that is required with that child.
I appreciate that. I also love the resources from the NetSmarts, the videos and the what to do situations. I think when we're thinking about kids who their brain is not fully developed until they enter into their 20s, that kind of playing with scenarios and what ifs with your children is a great way to prepare for that. So thank you for sharing that NetSmarts resource. My other question was about, you talked about kind of like kids are using their computers at all hours, especially after this last year when a lot of our life moved more towards online socialization, schooling, work, etc. Do you think parents should be setting a curfew, like a curfew hour for the technology?
Absolutely. Kids, like you just said, they're not fully developed. They need that downtime. They need away from the computer screen, especially before bed. They recommend, hour, 2 hours for them to start decompressing, getting off, and kind of, whether it's picking up a book, whether, yes, watching TV is, but it's different. Their brains processing things different. So absolutely, you know, whether it's your setting on the system or it's just curfews that you've installed with your kids, I think that's very critical for them.
Okay. And thank you so much for sharing, again, all these resources with us, but also your email so that parents can reach out to you should they need you as a resource for troubleshooting, etc. We appreciate your time and
No
help.
problem. Feel free to reach out and contact me.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.